All right, hello, this is Mr. Farrow here, or Austin, and today we're going to be learning about the branches of government, the United States government specifically. First we're going to start with a KWL chart, and so that is what do you already know, what do you want to learn, and then by the end of this lesson we'll review what you learned. So, what do you know about the government already? Do you know how many branches that there are in the United States government? Do you know what each of those branches do? Do you know how they relate to each other? What do you already know, or what have you already heard from previous experience? And then, what do you want to learn about the government? Do you want to learn more about the judicial branch and what purpose it serves, or about the legislative branch and who makes it up, and about the executive branch and what powers it has? Why do we even have three branches? What do you want to learn more about the government? So I encourage you to write those things down first, and then you can maybe pause the video and then resume it once you've written those things down. So I wanted to start with an analogy. And so I think all students are able to relate to a school setting, obviously, because they're students. And so comparing branches of government to being sort of like the roles in a school system. So you have your principal, you have your teachers, and you have your students. And each of them play a role to balance each other out. For example, a principal makes a lot of decisions for the school, whether it be how they spend their money, how they organize teachers, what they tell teachers to do, organizing recess times, or how the school schedule goes. Could be any of those things. This is the role of the principal, and they have a lot of power. However, the teachers kind of help check that power. Principals make decisions based off what the teachers want, what works for the teachers, what benefits them. And so teachers have a voice in this whole school system as well. And then, of course, there's the students, which is you. And the students make up a great part of the school system because everybody, including the principal and the teachers, base their decisions off of what is best for the students. And the students are allowed to voice what they think is best for them. And in this way, they sort of check each other, or they keep each other in one direction. And they try to stay unified. And all of them play a part in staying unified. So this is sort of like the United States branches of government. So in the United States government, we have three branches, similar to like the three different roles in a school, three of them: students, teachers, and principal. Well, we have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch in the United States government. And so we're going to go through all of them, who makes up each branch, and then what powers they have. So first we have the executive branch. And so right now, our executive branch consists of President Donald Trump, so you have the president, the vice president, who is now Mike Pence, and then the president's presidential cabinet. Now, the presidential cabinet is just a group of advisors for the president that oversees lots of different things in the country. And so they're sort of like a team for the president to make decisions about a bunch of ways to run the country. And so here are the powers that the executive branch has. One, they enforce the law. Two, they can veto bills passed by Congress. This means that if Congress wants to pass a bill, the president can decide to say, no, I don't want that to be passed, and override whatever Congress wants to do. Three, they command the military. Four, they appoint federal judges. Five, they can pardon federal crimes. And six, issue executive orders. So these are all the these are all the powers of the executive branch. And so now we're going to move to the judicial branch and who it's made up of. So first, you have the Supreme Court. And I guess really only this is what comprises the judicial branch. And the Supreme Court has justices, what are called Supreme Court justices. And so a common way that people remember what is the judicial branch, well, you have kind of that key morpheme in there, you could say, or key part of the word that's judge almost. It almost looks like judge when you see judicial. And so you can remember that it's made up of justices, and they have certain powers as well in their branch. And they really have less than the other branches, but one is to evaluate the law. And so they evaluate whether laws are constitutional, or they follow what's outlined in the Constitution of the United States. And then two, they have what's called judicial review, which is the power to decide if a law is constitutional or not, which is what we're kind of talking about. Essentially what their job is to make sure that people are following that guideline of the Constitution, that the executive branch and the legislative branch are following those guidelines. Then you have the legislative branch. So we have what's called Congress. and this is the legislative branch, but that Congress is made up of two parts. It's made of the Senate and the House of Representatives. And so these are two different parts, and every state has senators and representatives. And so for our state of California, we have some examples here. We have Kamala Harris, who is one of our California senators, and then Scott Peters, who is our San Diego representative. So these are people who make up the legislative branch in California, but there are people like Scott Peters and Kamala Harris in every single state. And they make decisions for the country, and this is some of the powers that they have. One, they can override the president's veto, meaning if Congress and the legislative branch tried to pass a law, the president could veto it or reject it, but then kind of going back again, the legislative branch can override that veto with a 2/3 vote. And at that point, the president can't do anything. If they override the veto, that's the last step. 2, legislative branch can declare war. 3, they can impeach and remove presidents or any of the Supreme Court justices. And 4, they can appropriate money to where it needs to go. And so next is a video. I encourage you to watch it on your own. You can play it. It's about 3 minutes long, but it talks about the balance of powers, what it is and what it means. And so I encourage you to watch the video, and then you can resume the rest of the PowerPoint here. And so now we have an activity. Now this is for in class, but you could also do it at home with your parents or your family. But you get into groups of 3 or 4, and then there'll be a scenario given. Maybe you think of a scenario yourself where maybe the judicial branch, the legislative branch, or the executive branch abuses their power some way, or they kind of break one of the laws or powers that they have, and then talk about with your parents or anybody else that's around how a branch would balance that power. How would one branch check the other if the time came? And so you can come up with your own hypothetical scenarios, or we'll be able to post some hypothetical scenarios for you to be able to discuss. But it's a good way to kind of test, how would this really work if something really happened? And so lastly, by the end of this presentation, I hope you know something different. For example, some people learn that the legislative branch really has a lot of the power. They have the most comparatively in number to both the other branches. And so this is important to know, but maybe you learned something else. I encourage you, share what you've learned, type what you've learned, bring it to class, share with your students and your classmates what you've learned. But I hope that you know now more than ever what the 3 branches of government are all